Jate, Steve Pelletier, Yenishe, Maidesh, Gijni, initially, Billigana Bashashin, Kima Chini, Dashache, Billigana Dashanale. Welcome back to Res Ball. Andy and I are recording this on December 15th, 2025, right after the Pistons just defeated the Boston Celtics. And really, we're going to talk trades because that's been the big thing with the Pistons over the last week and a half. So let's get started right about now. Andy, let everyone know where they can find you before we get started.
You can find me on Twitter at D_D_Pistons_fan. This team just keeps on winning. We just keep on complaining. It's amazing how consistent this season has been.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, and we're going to pause here at the beginning and talk about the positives because, well, we like to remain critical and look at the minutia of where this team's going to get better. And really, the criticism comes from knowing we don't want this team to be good. We want them to have playoff success. And a lot of the things that we see are not sure it's going to work in a playoff success. Um, I mean, you just got to look in the Eastern Conference itself with the Cavs, with the Knicks, and even the Celtics. The Celtics, before they traded for Porzingis, Derek White, Drew Holiday, like every year they just fell short because they didn't have enough. So that's why we were. But we do want to, 21 and 5 through 26 games first seed in the East. Let's focus on some positives first. This team is really good, and they ought to be celebrated as such until proven otherwise. So, what do you want to celebrate most from this team, Andy, before we talk about trades?
Well, I mean, everyone celebrates him, but how many games has he won for us? And I'm talking about Cade Cunningham. I mean, yes, JB has done a good job coaching. Like, the roster is super deep. We won games when Cade was out. But how many games are relatively close and this guy is clutch in the fourth quarter and just make sure that we win the game? That's the thing that I think we can't say enough of is just how good he is. Because while the rotation still continues to change around him as we try to work Ivy back in and things kind of adjust, he's just good. He just wins us basketball games. And that's the one thing that I think we can look forward to in the playoffs is when it's your best guy against our best guy. We've got a pretty good best guy. So I like our chances.
Sorry for that pause here. I was trying to set up. Yes, obviously Cade, Cade's the man. Definitely should be top, what, three in MVP voting? Where would you put him in the MVP conversation right now?
I I don't think you can go less than top three because the Pistons are the best team in the East. I mean, I think I think like the thing we talked about before the season started was he'll put up the numbers to be an MVP, but the team won't have the wins. Well, the wins are not a problem. The team has the wins. So I think you got to keep him in top three.
Yeah, and if he outproduces SGA from like an overall standpoint, rebounds, steals and blocks, the defensive field goal percentages and things like that, and then we come down and they're both like the number one seeds in their respective conferences. We'll see how much that, oh, we don't want to give a repeat champion because they've screwed Jokic out of what, like two MVPs now. The one where they gifted it to Embiid, what a shame that was. And then last year is where they gave it to SGA instead. That one's less, I have less beef with that one, although who's the only other center to average a triple double in NBA history? I'm just saying, So we'll see if these things come up with Cade. The other guy I want to celebrate, though, he's number two in the NBA in steal percentage. Who's that?
Asar Thompson?
Nope,
Hmm. And it's not Cade Cunningham.
it's not Cade Cunningham.
It's not Ron Holland.
It is Ron
It
Holland.
is Ron Holland.
Yeah, right behind Casey Wallace right now. Pulling this from Basketball Reference, and he's been in the top five pretty much all season. So Casey Wallace, 4% steal percentage, number one. Number two is Ron Holland. Why is that a huge deal, Andy?
Well, I would talk about minutes, but for a percentage, the minutes won't matter. But man, I did not know that's how high his steal percentage was.
minutes do still matter because he doesn't play as many minutes as these other guys in the top five. Think about it. Cason Wallace, Jalen Suggs, Josh Okogie, Kawhi Leonard for crying out loud, Chris Dunn, Reed Shepard, OG Anunoby, Jamal Shed, Brandon Williams. Brandon Williams is probably the only other guy here who plays around that same kind of a role. We saw it tonight. I mean, Ron does get called for quite a few fouls, but the reason why is he always has instincts to jump. There's probably one steal he gets every game where it turns into an easy dunk. I mean, his aggression and his ability on defense, his instincts. Again, all the guys I just listed here, they either like a Brandon Williams, who's in the top 10. It took him a while to find his footing, but again, another Arizona Wildcat who I followed for a while, he learned how to do that and chip in on defense. But other guys here like Reed Shepard, Chris Dunn, Okogie, these are guys that from day one came in with top-notch defensive instincts that even if they didn't quite figure out their offensive role quite yet, they still knew how to jump in passing lanes and study film and stuff like that. And Ron is tops, right there next to Case and Wallace. So cannot say enough good things about Ron Holland. You just want him to continue to iron out his offense because if he, all those other guys, this is why I keep saying I think Ron Holland is going to be a solid shooter and really a big building block that I don't think enough people talk about. Because with the exception here of Brandon Williams and maybe Jamal Shed, but I would still go to bat for Jamal Shed. All these other guys are like legit building blocks. OG Anunoby, Reed Shepard, Chris Dunn worked his way back into being super integral defensive piece for that Clipper team. Kawhi Leonard, Okogie always been super solid. Jalen Suggs, and then Case and Wallace. I mean, those are really top-notch defensive producers. So kudos to Ron Holland. Continue to celebrate him, and please, Ron, let that three-point shot iron itself out as you continue to get better. What should we look for in this next like 24-ish games? Pretty much until the All-Star break, right? It's 26. I say 24 because then it gets us into the 50. We're obviously going to pause after the next 30 game and actually pull on off stats, defensive field goal percentage. But looking forward, because we have just been thinking like the other shoe is going to drop, but we're almost at the 30 game mark. The other shoe really hasn't dropped, and especially for a tonight like tonight with Boston, who clearly understands the weaknesses of the Pistons, where they're like, we're going to play as a zone. We're going to force them to shoot threes. We're going to make Duncan Robinson foul, so he's not really involved in the game. We're just going to chuck up threes, and it really did not work. On the one hand, you can say like, well, they lost to the Celtics because the Celtics missed shots they normally hit. Sure, but it really came down to the dogma of the Celtics is one of those things that like you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And it's just like the Pistons kept playing their game. They were not concerned over what the Celtics were doing. And even when the game got close, it didn't seem like it mattered to them. And Pistons go down 12 early in the game. They claw their way back in and win the game. So it's like, I think we're going to see them struggle. Obviously, at some point, every last single team does. But what should you expect in this next 24-ish games, Andy?
So tonight, I believe, was the first time that Jaden Ivey got over 20 minutes. I think he played like 21 minutes tonight. Um, the biggest thing I would like to see is, I mean, I'll probably give JB like five, maybe 10 more games before it's like, okay, let's see more of a commitment to a rotation and some clearly defined roles because I think a lot of this gets masked because they're winning games. But if there was this much uncertainty in roles and minutes and they were losing, it'd be a huge, huge problem. But, winning disguises like masks all your problems, which I'm not picking or criticizing JB because it's a situation you can't win. Like, as much as I have criticized Karis LeVert, as much as I have criticized Javante Green, like, I think Karis LeVert is the highest percentage three-point shooter on the team. Like, do I have faith on that and believe that that will continue? No, I do not. Um, Javante Green, his percentage has come down. I think he's at like 33% or whatever, but he still hits timely threes when he's open. So I'm not, you can't be mad that they're playing because the team is winning, but over, 5 to 10 more games, I would like to see some more clearly defined roles that we know what the rotation looks like. And JB has slowly adjusted it. Like I believe in the last two games, I think Ivy has been the first one off the bench to replace Duncan. Um, Duncan did play less minutes tonight, which for me is a concern because I actually think he's one of the most important players for us to have on the court just because of his three-point shooting. And I think it really helps us offensively. Um, Asar Thompson, I believe, has just gotten lost in his offensive role. He had a great cut tonight for a layup. Um, but I just feel like we're winning games, but a lot of it is not very clear in terms of what's happening. And I think that's like my biggest criticism of Levert is there are times when he will score at the end of the possession, but if you look at the entire possession, the whole thing was bad process. There was like no flow to the possession. There's almost a turnover. And yes, he makes the bucket to bail it out, but I think that like disguises poor process. Like I would rather see good process and a missed bucket than poor process and a good bucket because in the long run, I just don't believe it's sustainable. So I would like to see Asar Thompson's role more clearly defined. I'd like to see Jaden Ivey's role more clearly defined. That's what I would like to see happen in the next 10 games.
Yeah, on the positive side, Jaden Ivey is going to play more minutes. Right now, the leaders in minutes through 25 games, again, I'm pulling this from Basketball Reference, are Cade Cunningham, Duncan Robinson, Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson, Ron Holland, Isaiah Stewart, Javonte Green, Tobias Harris, Karis LeVert, and then Dennis rounds out the 10. So Ivy's obviously going to jump in there. I would guess the more Ivy minutes means that Javonte, LeVert, and probably Ron Holland's minutes suffer somewhat. I also wouldn't be surprised if Jalen Duren's minutes come down by like one or two, just because again, you've got to chip away at some. And on a night like tonight, like where Duren's presence should be felt, and it's not felt as much. And the Boston Celtics were crying out loud to run a centerless lineup again, then it's like, yeah, let's chip away at that. And that probably also will be the case for like Duncan. Maybe it's Duncan and Duran, like their minutes kind of wax and wane depending on what it is for Ivy. And again, it's probably only one or two, but the main ones like Javante's minutes are probably going to go down pretty significantly. Levert's are probably going to go down by like five or so, and then Ron some, and then somebody else in the lineup has to play a little bit less just so Ivy can get in there. So I do think in the next 24 games we should see Ivy play 20 or more minutes, and then it does end up being that 10-man rotation where either Javante or Karras are like the 10th man at the end of that rotation. It's probably going to end up being Javante, unfortunately. But that's the positive side. I think in the next 24 games, we'll get an idea of like what Ivy's doing out there and get a better sense of what he looks like in this offense and if he is another legitimate second scorer or what the team ought to do with him next. On the negative side of things, though, I do still think that the free throw shooting is going to catch up with them. It's got to catch up with them within the next month at least. Tonight's another good example. I don't think a star hit a single free throw, and he's been the worst culprit of this all season. A star right now through 25 games is shooting 56.1% from the free throw line, so that is better. We'll see what it ends up being tonight because I'm pretty sure he was 0-4 from the free throw line. And we brought up the disparage in the free throws and the free throw percentage, the attempts and the percentage. I do think that's going to catch up to them in the next couple of games, and like we'll see what they do as a result. So just keep an eye on that because the 3 point. Just pausing this real quick. They really don't have great 3 point shooting numbers, right? But it doesn't seem like it matters because of how much they get in the paint and how efficient they are in the paint, and why that Heat game still stands out in my mind because I'm like, yeah, I kind of think Boston's more of a problem for them than the Heat because the Heat like invest so much in Bam, but he's not a rim protector, and they've never really invested in like trying to stop people getting in the paint and scoring. And then their big thing this year was trying to do the two big lineup with what's his face, Khalil Ware and Bam, but it hasn't worked out great and like doesn't look fantastic. So for a team like that, it's like, yeah, they don't really pose that big of a threat. And then everybody else out east is just a crapshoot, right? So I don't know what you think about the 3 point percentage because I'm at the point now where I'm like, in the regular season, I really don't think that's going to give them too big of an issue.
My concern with that is just just the math of the modern NBA, you need to shoot a certain number of threes at a certain percentage to give yourself good opportunities to win. And that's where we talked about like I would really be scared to play Boston in the playoffs, but I think any team should be because they just need a good 6 game stretch of shooting threes and they can beat a lot of teams just because of the math of that 3 point shot. And you don't have to shoot as many as them. But like when Boston beat the Pistons last time, I think they were outscored by like almost 25 or 30 points from the 3 point line. And that's just so hard to make up. And if you take Duncan Robinson out of our lineup, who who's who's gonna shoot who's gonna shoot volume 3 pointers? Like we don't have that guy.
Yeah, see, this is why to me it's not a big deal in the regular season because on a night like tonight where Duncan was a non-factor, Cade shot like 9 threes. Ivy took a bunch of threes. Karras hit enough of them. Javante understood the assignment and kept taking them to right. Whereas if this is a series under 7 games where you can come back and adjust and go down your hot streaks, then it just takes one hot streak. I think you were saying this before we started recording. For a full series, yeah, I don't think Boston's going to be missing too many of the threes like tonight. But for one game every month or so, then yeah, it's like whatever. So we are here to talk about trade. The first type of trade, I mean, there's a bunch of different trades here. Let's get serious. Is Giannis even a possibility? We're going to talk about trying to find a number two scorer because I think that's what most media outlets have been talking about. I think a lot of them have centered around AD just because the Mavericks look lost. We don't know when Kyrie's coming back. He obviously fired Nico. So it's like, why bother now when you're down at the bottom part of the West? But the other one talked about a lot is Giannis because the Bucks continue to slip also. I think the Bucks are what, like 10 or something right now? Let me look at it before I misspeak. Yeah, they're 10th. They're the 10th seed in the East. Who knows when Giannis is going to come back? And that's another one that like Bleacher Report and The Ringer and all these have talked about with Giannis being traded to different places. Is it even a possibility? Because to me, I'm like, if OKC wants that deal, then obviously OKC is going to get that deal just because everything they have to offer. But if the Pistons can somehow get Giannis, the deal is probably something like Ivy, Tobias, Duran, and Karras plus like 2 or 3 picks, right? Um, yes or no to you if Giannis is even a possibility.
I say no, but I'm someone who says no to almost any max player just because I just think with the way the salary cap works right now, if you have your solid number one, what deficiencies do you have? Like, I think if you can address those without getting a max guy, you have so much more roster flexibility than when you've got two guys with some huge contracts where you don't have much flexibility. But if we're just talking just Giannis, no, I'm not a fan of that one.
Just for debate's sake, I'm going to say yes on this, only because I think Kate and Giannis share similar mindset. Stu and Giannis share a similar mindset. And then you have the second leader in steal percentage in Ron Holland, as well as the defensive ace of Asar. You still have Duncan Robinson. And we saw with the Bucks, it really took like shooting around Giannis. So I think if the Pistons were smart and Trajan smart, then it's like, hey, let's round out the shooting around here also. And in the East, again, I don't think New York could handle Cade very well by himself, but having to handle Giannis and Cade, and then Cleveland having to handle Giannis and Cade, and it is leaning way more towards into having this defensive identity and getting into a rock fight, which I think again Giannis is totally down to do and would be amazing to see. So it does got out the depth, but as I've said before, if Trajan is a good GM, a great GM, he's going to be proactive and be like, okay, I'm going to do this and then build out the rest of it here and go forward from there. So
Okay,
I
so
think it's worth thinking about, but the main thing for me and the hang up on it would be Giannis's health. I mean, I really need to have him run through like a bunch of physicals. He's 31 years old And it is a pushing your chips all the way into the middle of the table because you're done at this point, unless you want to trade a Sar, unless you want to trade Ron Holland. God forbid you want to trade Beef Stew, because those are the only other guys you can move at that point. Because Giannis and Cade and the rest of the roster, you're stuck with that payroll.
Okay, because my question would be, if you did this, how confident are you in Giannis's health next season and then the season after? So for me, that's where I'm looking at because Cade has a runway of years. So I'm looking at something that can capitalize on now that doesn't look bad in 2 years out where it's like, oh, we're tied to this decision because it was the best thing we saw. I know nobody wants to wait, they want to do it now, but that would be my concern is the next year and then the year after that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, if you had this possibility, I'd be like, I'd probably just go more in on a Devin Booker trade at that point. He's 29, it's 2 years younger. So if you think about like, oh, these guys have 5 years legitimately left at this level, then you have Booker until he's 34, whereas you have a Giannis until he's 36. I know that 2 year difference doesn't seem like a lot, but again, Father Time's undefeated. Not everybody's KD, not everybody is a LeBron James, especially for a player like Giannis. You're just like, oof, like his game is predicated so much on physicality. Once he breaks down, like it's not gonna be pretty. And I believe he's dealing with what, lower back injuries, right? Which is never a good thing for a big dude.
I was gonna say at least with Booker that he can shoot and space the floor, which he can. This year he's not shooting well, but that's a skill set. Like if you look at, obviously Steph Curry is a freak of nature, but if you look at a shooter, you can definitely carry shooting older into your career, longer into your career than if it's, built on athletic moves to the hoop.
I mean, when you're number two on a nightly basis is like Dylan Brooks, Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, you gotta be just putting them up. Also, and the main thing too with Giannis beyond the health for me is like, man, that Dame Lillard and Giannis two-man game, it should have killed everybody, but it never looked good because Giannis didn't want to screen and like didn't want to have Damian Lillard play off him. So again, I just said yes for just the sake of it, and it would be fun to see. But realistically, like if I had to make the decision, that probably would be the thing that would make me say no, just because I'm like, oof, the Dame and Giannis connection should have been like picture perfect and easy to work, and it didn't. And then Kate isn't like a Dame, and they both need the ball. It just seems a little bit weird. Whereas with the Devin Booker thing, again, 2 years younger. And we've already seen what he looks like next to a top-notch point guard. Every time he's had a really good point guard, he's played well. And it's like, yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Who else would even be available though? Like again, throw Giannis out there. The other ones that I thought of before we get into AD is Kobe White and Domantas Sabonis. Like they really only seem like the other realistic options. Chicago, who knows what they're doing? Kobe White's due for an extension this offseason. I don't know what that conversation even looks like. Domantas Sabonis because is currently injured. The Kings, lol, sell the team chance. They're currently 14th, second to last in the West. They look terrible. So yeah, that's completely on the table for Domantas Sabonis. And anybody out there, we're not going to discuss John Morant. We're not going to discuss Zion Williams. We don't want Zach LaVine. We don't want Trae Young. We don't want LaMelo Ball. If you want those guys, you can go find another podcast that talks about it because those are all terrible fits for health reasons, or most of those guys are point guards or ball dominant guards too. So, and the Zach LaVine one, like at this point, it's probably like realistic and not that expensive, but just his comments about not playing defense and just his whole overall attitude, it just seems like the anti-Pistons and what they're building. So it just seems like a bad fit that it wouldn't happen right now. Your thoughts on Kobe White, Domantas Sabonis, though, before we get into AD?
So the more we have talked about it, I think a Kobe White type player is actually the best move. Um, Now, they're in no rush that they have to make a move like this. And ideally, you're hoping that Ivy is this guy where can you just give Cade a consistent 20-point scorer, someone who can just score some buckets? Put that person on this team, and it's like how much of the load, like it just lessens the load so much for Cade. I think the whole team looks better. Um, I'm still not a fan of JB and the all bench units that we're using now since we're playing such a large rotation where starters are usually not staggered in. Um, but I think just getting back to Kobe White, I think that's the type of player we need, depending on what position that they play. Um, Give me someone who can score 20 on any night, and that that does a lot.
Yeah, and Kobe White came back from injury right now. He's scoring 21.7 points per game. 3.2 rebounds, 5 assists, 0.7 steals, zero point zero blocks per game. Shooting splits for Kobe White right now are 57.3% from 2-point range, 26.9% from threes in a slump, and then 80.9% from the free throw line. Only played 9 games so far, though. Like I said, he's worked his way back from injury. And Kobe Wright right now, 56.7% true shooting percentage, 47.2% three-point attempt rate, and then 47.9% free throw attempt rate. Again, exactly the kind of guy that we need, who around 50% of his shots come from three, and then he's able to get to the line like that and just generate offense. And a guy like that leading the second unit and with the ability to play on Cade, yeah, obviously great. I know you didn't like the Sabonis trade when I proposed in the offseason. Anything change your mind about that?
Still not a fan of Sabonis. I know numbers wise I should be. I'm just not. And maybe part of that, and it's not his fault that he's on the Kings and they don't know how to build something that makes any sense. I mean, they had a hot stretch for a couple seasons where things clicked and then they just like self-destructed and did what they normally do. But I am not a Sabonis fan. So unfortunately, nothing has happened to change my opinion on that.
Yeah, totally fair. I mean, the main thing is he'd be cheaper at a cheaper price now with where the Kings are at. But it really depends on Duran, and Duran might end up being a better defender than Sabonis ever will be. Although Sabonis still a fantastic playmaker and occasionally will pop those threes, which Duran never does. So again, I get it. We'll come back to Duran obviously as we continue to evaluate his game and whether or not he's worth 30 million or more. AD's the big one now. Come back from injury and with Dallas. Dallas is currently in the 10th spot in the West. And really, I talked about like Devin Booker, but I think Devin Booker is completely off the table because Phoenix right now is in the 7th spot in the West. And before I put this together, Portland was in the 10th spot in the West. And I was saying in my notes, I think these guys that are in the 6 to 10 seed right now in the West, which is Minnesota, Phoenix, Golden State, Memphis, and then it was Portland at the time. I'm like, I don't think any of those teams really want to trade away like one of their big names because they're still in it. And especially for the guys towards the bottom, Memphis, Portland, Golden State, like they want to make the playoffs. See, clearly the moves they've made and how they've built their team over the last couple of years, like that's what they want to do. It doesn't make sense to blow it up right now. So Dallas being in the 10th spot kind of messes that up, but they have the same record as Portland. But I mean, they fire Nico. It's clear it seems like they're in rebuild. Who knows if Kyrie even comes back this year? I do still think AD is on the table for a lot of different people because it's like, why? What's the point of having him? And what's the point of trying to get like the 8th seed now out there in the West? So, number one, would you want AD? And number two, what do you think it would cost for AD on the Pistons?
I would not want AD. Um, and mainly it's just health. Like I don't want a guy with a big contract that is not available. I mean, I just think that that torpedoes your team so badly because you have that much production. You're paying for so much production and it's just not available. Like it is, and I think that's why you see certain teams struggle that you just can't overcome that. And the only way I see a deal or something like that happening is that his value is so low that it's basically like, yep, we got a bargain. But then you have to ask yourself, like, is it really a bargain when it comes time to re-sign that? And oh, I I don't want to do any mental exercises to bring him to Detroit.
I can see it. He fits the whole what we're talking about with Giannis and how we're like, I don't know if they fit. I think he would fit perfectly next to Cade, to be perfectly honest. Like we've seen how he plays next to LeBron James, obviously. Even when like Drew Holiday and what is that guy's name? I keep forgetting who he is. Tyreek Evans, like when he was in New Orleans, like we see like, yeah, this works. But the health, obviously, I mean, the health makes it a no. Nobody ever expects AD to be healthy. But I will say, this isn't enough to get it done. But if it was something like Tobias and Karras, like two completely expendable guys, and like a first round pick this year, I honestly would probably do it. AD's only due the contract next year, and then he has a player option, which all these guys always opt out of in that final year, right? He has that player option after next season. And then, if it doesn't work out, you just wasted, quote unquote, wasted like two veterans who weren't in your long-term plans either. And then like one pick this year. Now, again, I'm not condoning this. It's just a nice thought exercise to think about. And for me too, if I did that, I would completely like I would make up every last single injury I could. Be like, oh yeah, he's just gonna rest for a while. He's got sore hamstrings, Dallas didn't treat him right or whatever. And then when the playoffs come, be like, all right, now we roll him out there. Really treat him with kid gloves, right? Because you got the depth everywhere else, right? Like you don't really need him in the regular season. That's not why you got him anyway. And then when he has to face down the Evan Mobleys and the Carl Anthony Towns and whatever, then they're like, uh-oh, how do we game plan for this? So if it was something like that where you can just kind of get some expendable veterans and maybe like one pick, it's something to consider if you understand how to navigate the health concerns, I think.
So in that scenario, I understand how because if you just had to give up that and not to diminish them, but if you had to give up Tobias and Karras and a pick, then yeah, like the playoff Pistons with Anthony Davis on it, and that, yeah, that would be that would probably be, I would say that might be the best team in the East. Like that's like legitimately like you have a shot of going to the finals, and then once you get there, anything could happen. So in that circumstance, and I get the logic behind rolling the dice. Um, would I still like it? Like you said, you're like, we have to do everything we can to not play him in the regular season just so we can unwrap him for the playoffs. Yeah, I could see that if the price, but then you would be bidding against other teams who are also like at that price, what can we put together that might be just a little bit better to try and do the same thing and unwrap him for the playoffs?
I mean, we don't know what the offer is. And if Giannis is out there like legitimate on the trade block, this is where somebody can sneak in, right? Because everybody else is trying to get Giannis. Before we go into if there even is a Hail Mary trade, I mean, we might have said the Hail Mary trades already. Is there a number two in hiding out there? What I mean by this, think of Chris Middleton on the Bucks, who nobody took seriously as a number two. He wasn't a trade, but he still was a signing that they're like, we believe in this guy, he can work, and then slowly rounded his way into being the number two for the Bucks. And I think it was Devin Booker who recently this last year said like Middleton was the reason they won the finals because he just killed him in the mid range. And then the other guy to think about is Pascal Siakam last year, where everybody's like, yeah, the Pacers got him, whatever. He's not really a number two, and then blew up to get them to the finals and is well, they're number one right now. Well, Halliburton comes back and is clearly like a legitimate number two guy scoring and defense and all this stuff that can get you to the finals. Are there any guys out there maybe hiding where like Pascal's hidden on this team that you already know he was good? He kind of rounded himself out, but the Raptors are trash. Or Middleton, where it's like this guy hasn't really been given his opportunity, but in the right situation, he could be a number two in hiding. Any number twos in hiding for you out there? And please, no poop jokes, number two in hiding.
Number two in hiding. I honestly have not watched a lot of NBA basketball outside of the Pistons. I think I've only missed two Pistons games, but outside of that, I have not watched many other NBA games. So I do not have any good ideas for a number two in hiding.
So I have a few options, but I'm going to lead off with really the other ones I'm kind of like, and maybe, but this one for sure, I think I would go for it. This guy is scoring 15.2 points per game, pulling in 2.7 rebounds, 3.2 assists per game, zero point 0.6 steals, 0.3 blocks per game, shooting splits for this gentleman 54.6% from 2-point range, 47.5% from 3-point range, and then 85.7% from the free throw line. This guy has played a total of 556 minutes this season in 20 games, and true shooting percentage for this guy 64.8%. He is a guard. He is listed at 6'4", 200 pounds. Do you have any idea who this number two in hiding might be? He's currently out with a thumb injury, but
I do not know who this number two is. I know my boy Corey Kispert is out with a thumb injury, but I don't think he's a number two in hiding.
he's definitely not scoring like this either. I'm talking about Io DeSunmu from the Bulls. Quietly is having his best season. There again, 15.2 points per game, 2.7 rebounds, 3.2 assists, shooting splits for Io or 54.6% from 2-point range, 47.5% from three, and then 85.7% from the free throw line. 3-point attempt rate, I can give you that too, is 38.7%. And really, the last two seasons before this, his 3-point attempt rate has continued to increase to over 40%. And if you don't know anything about Ayo Dosunmu, he fits the idea of this team too. He likes to drive. His number one thing is trying to get in the paint and cause havoc and get to the rim and finish. And then he's gotten better as a three-point shooter and been an okay defender. And really, this is like the version of Karras that we would like. Instead of dribbling and having too much wasted motion, Io's an attacker. Number one, he just wants to get downhill and then shoot the three-point shot. And really, I mean, he's been 64.8% true shooting. That tells you he's been like extremely efficient. He's also in the last year of his contract. So they have to either think about Kobe White or they have to think about Ayo Dosunmu, or maybe they're not thinking about Ayo at all. Who knows, right? With the Bulls. So I think Ayo is maybe the only number two guy legitimately hiding out there because he's got game, man, and he's been getting quietly better and better. And even if you don't think like he's a number two, like what did that profile I just laid out? That's the guy you want to bring in and totally replace Karras. And what they wanted to sign with like the Nikhil Alexander Walker or the Karras LeVert, like that's what they need.
I mean, it's almost like which one do the Bulls want to re-sign and keep, and we'll take the other one.
Yeah, no, for real. And IO for his career, 37.1% shooter from 3-point range, 58.4% from 2-point range, and then 78.5% from the free throw. And he would help with the free throw percentage as well. Again, 85.7. And there's been what, three out of his five seasons where IO shot above 80% from the free throw line, and then four out of his five seasons where IO has shot above 78% from the free throw line. So we need that guy also.
How does he compare to Ivy defensively?
That's the one I have to look into a little bit more. When I remember looking at IO before, because I've been a big IO fan since Illinois. I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I remember his freshman season at Illinois, I was one of the few draft people that was like this dude is legit. Like you should at least give him a role as a bench scorer. I think he can generate free throws and be like this combo guard. And tracking him since his rookie year, he hasn't been fantastic. He's been a little bit better than Ivy, but it's like, saying somebody is taller when they're 6'3.5" versus like 6'2 3/4. So I'll have to go and look in the tape again and get a better idea of what Io looks like on defense. I will say in watching the Bulls, though, I've never seen Io not give effort. And Billy Donovan there. Billy Donovan's not going to just hand out minutes to guys that don't give effort. That's one of his staples. And one of the things why the Bulls continue to scrap and fight around is because Billy Donovan doesn't allow you to go out there and just slouch.
Yeah, I could see that. And now, anytime we look at adding a guard, basically that means moving Ivy, correct?
Maybe. I mean, I said this to Scott, shout out to Scott in the Slack chat. I was like, I'll take Ivy's production and minutes seriously when JB takes Ivy's, minutes seriously. It's just hard to know what exactly they think until they give him 25 or more minutes to see like, okay, this is what they're going with. And if they continue to do this like under 20 minutes, then it does seem like, all right, just trade him then.
Now, does it seem like just trade him, or does it seem like they're just tanking his value so they can try and keep him on a decent deal? Because Ivy's minutes haven't made sense to me, but we'll go back to our search for a number two before I take you off on a tangent we can talk about next time.
Yeah, I know. Because I wanted to give it more time to where, we consistently see a better role for Ivy. Hopefully by 30 games, it's a little bit better. But yeah, we'll definitely return to Ivy. The only other number twos in hiding I've been thinking about is like somebody on Portland. Obviously not Denny Avdia because Denny Avdia, in my opinion, should definitely win Most Improved Player of the Year. If you haven't been following Denny Avdia, like he makes Jalen Duren look like a bench player. Denny Avdia, 25.5 points per game, 7.2 rebounds, 6.3 assists, 0.7 steals, 0.7 blocks per game, 52.9, 37.3, 81.9 or 81.2% from the free throw line on 9.6 free throw attempts per game. And if you haven't caught any Portland games, go watch it just because Denny Avdia is lighting it up. And again, he doesn't win most improved player. Like, just get rid of that award. It's ridiculous. Why I said anybody on Portland not named Denny Avdia though, because they do have guys that like theoretically could be a number two, like Drew Holiday, who's 16.7 points per game, like our old buddy Jeremy Grant, or even though I don't like this one, even somebody like Shaden Sharp who is scoring 21.7 points per game. He's not incredibly efficient at it, but he does look like a number two scorer. Well, they did sign him to that deal too, so I think he might have gotten taken off the table. I should have looked that up before I started, but they do have some options, especially with like the Jeremy Grant and the Drew Holiday, especially Drew Holiday. Like if they fall out of it, Andrew Holiday doesn't have like a terrible calf injury, and Portland ends up being clearly in like the 11 to 15 range, and then it's like I think that's probably something worth looking into for a number two hidden in a site. Although Drew Holiday's contract might have something to say about that. Drew Holiday is owed 34 million next year, and then the player option after it. So probably the same situation that I laid out with AD. And then the other ones that I thought about, but I think only if they're used to facilitate a bigger trade, is Andrew Wiggins or Norman Powell on the Heat. Both are playing really well for the Heat. I only put them here if and only if they're used to facilitate like a trade for Anthony Davis. John Morant's been whispered about going to the Heat, Kyrie Irving as well, and Zion. Like if the Heat try to land one of those guys, and those teams are like, we don't necessarily want these guys, especially Norman Powell, who's on the last year of his deal, I think. Those would be other ones that I'm like that would make sense to be like, hey, we'll take them for this season or whatever. So not crazy about any of those. The Drew Holiday, especially since he seems like he's injured and breaking down. Again, you got him for 2-ish years, and then Jeremy Grant, we've already kind of seen that nobody really wants him. His deal is a little bit easier to swallow, 34 next year and then 36. Like you at least can see him being productive in the last 2 years of his deal, still 20-point per game scorer. And then Andrew Wiggins, Norman Powell, I think they'd be fine. Clearly would be the number two guy immediately here on this Pistons squad. I can give you what they're scoring right now. But again, I think that's just Miami trying to land the big fish if they don't think they have any chance in free agency. Nobody's really kind of lined up there. And then Andrew Wiggins, 16.9 points per game right now, and Norman Powell, 24.6 points per game. Realistically, I don't see why they would do that, but it's the Heat. They're always searching for the big fish, so you never know. Any thoughts on those guys, like the Portland guys or the Heat guys?
Um, I would be curious on like a Tobias Harris for Jeremy Grant swap. Just when you look at production and like scoring and like it's almost like a Julius Randle replacing Tobias Harris that you're like that gives the team like a bump in terms of scoring production. But then the question I really ask myself, which like I love numbers, but at the same time, does the team lose even though they get a better player in terms of production? Does the team not function the same way it does with Tobias? Because he's only been here 2 years, and these last 2 years have been pretty damn good for what this team has done. So, and I know we just want to look at points, rebounds, assists, all that, but man, for as long as Tobias has been here, we have seen some very good basketball. So that's where I would question making those moves. Unfortunately, we don't have the salary to get like a Drew Holiday without moving Tobias. So unless unless you're gonna put together, yeah, I mean, I don't see how we would have the salary to get like a Drew Holiday. Um, and I think earlier, I'm not sure if we talked about it on the show or if it was before we started recording, but we talked about guys who, when given the opportunity in a bigger role, that you're like, wow, I didn't know this guy was that good. But that's what we see in Denny Avdia, that it's just like, wow, look at that guy. Look at what he can do. Because I remember there was a few guys on Pistons Twitter who were like, I wish the Pistons would get him. But again, we don't know if the opportunity and the role would have been available here that he got out there to showcase what he could do.
Yeah, real quick, I did look up the Shaden Sharp. He can be traded right now. And again, I don't think Portland would do that. And I don't think Shaden Sharp is a great fit in Detroit, seeing as how Chauncey hated his defensive effort, and that hasn't changed too much. But another 20 point per game scorer right now. So if you want to root for a Shaden Sharp trade, just so you know it's out there. Any Hail Mary trades that you can think of, Andy? I really think the Giannis is probably like the only Hail Mary trade. Devin Booker, obviously. I think those are really the only like Hail Mary trades to consider.
I mean, you think I'm nuts, but my Hail Mary trade would have been for Kyrie. But that's like what we talked about. Like, what? You're talking about a guy who hasn't played basketball in like a year and you're gonna roll the dice? But it's just a matter of when he is on the court, the guy can score, and Cade can do everything else. Just give him some scoring help. But like we talked about with Kobe White, there's there's cheaper versions of adding some scoring to reduce his burden than a Hail Mary.
It's also like, hey, you get the injury risk of AD as well as potentially the head case of a John Morant. Like, great, it's the best of both worlds in that trade. Yeah. I think the Devin Booker one is still my Hail Mary trade if there really was like, okay, we got to push all our chips in and trade all you can for somebody. Yeah, that's probably still the one that makes the most sense, both from the fit as well as the philosophy and the makeup of the player. We know he would buy in. We know he would fit well with Cade. Like, you don't have to think about any of that stuff once he comes in. The only thing is just money and like what you have left over to build out the rest of the team. But the last two things to think about are, I think, the more realistic things. Again, the trade exception guys. The trade exception guys, I should probably pull this up on the screen just so that way if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see who the trade exception guys I've identified at least because I know I gave the list in the preseason when we did this, but I wanted to update it too and give you all some more guys that I found on the trade exception list that I'm like, you know what? These could work also. And there's more guys out there. Excuse me. So remember, the trade exception was created. Sorry, my cat is down here chewing on the cord, which she's not allowed to do. And the trade exception was created when Dennis Schroeder was signed to the Kings, and the Pistons, instead of getting a player back from it, they said, okay, the Kings can now give us that money. and they get a 14.3 exception. So they can trade for any player who's 14.3 million salary or less than that. And you don't have to trade a player back. You can trade pick or something else, you know? So I still think this is very good thing to utilize because we still think they need a shooter number one. I mean, we're going to say that until it happens. They definitely need another shooter. And if they could find a number two in this, because there are some guys here in this list that we've already listed that actually can fit into this trade exception. So let me pull up this list so we can all see it here. So at the top of the list in all caps with three exclamation points. I know I'm Keon Ellis. Obviously, Keon Ellis. Kings aren't playing him enough. He fits perfectly in the lineup. Fantastic defender, fantastic shooter. What else do you need? Daniel Gafford. Buddy Hield, I'm souring on because he really hasn't done much. But I mean, if you want a Buddy Hield and think he's being held back a little bit by what the Warriors are doing, sure. Herb Jones, we've had Herb Jones. Josh Green, Grant Williams, both from the Hornets, who I believe both are currently hurt. They could be in there. Kobe White and Io both fit into this trade exception also. So if you're out there and you want them, or the Pistons are out there and want them, like they don't even have to trade a player back if the Bulls didn't want one. They could just be like, here's a pick and send that guy over here, and the Pistons don't have to ruin their depth either. There, so Kobe White and Io soon will both fit into the player exception. Isaac Okoro, Corey Kispert. I put Sadiq come home. If you haven't looked at Sadiq Bey's production in New Orleans, he's played pretty good. He's been like 12 to 15 points per night, shooting it very well from three. I haven't looked at his defensive numbers to be realistic. I haven't really watched too many Pelican game, but Sadiq is producing like we all thought he would. And if you want another low price option, Sadiq come back. We already know he works with these guys, and they would all love for him to be back. Jordan Hawkins, another buy low option here. Hasn't really done much this season with the Pelicans. They seem to have given up on him, Troy Weaver in that regime, but we all know how well Troy Weaver is in talent evaluation. We know Jordan Hawkins is a knockdown shooter when given the chance. Max Christie, another guy I put with an exclamation point. I believe he's around 11 to 12 points per game. Ditto with what I said about Keon Ellis. Not quite the defender Keon Ellis is, but still another 6'6" wing who could handle the rock a little bit, score, and potentially be a like a number three, number four type of guy. Najee Marshall's another one who low key has been playing very well there for the Mavericks. And if they are selling off things, he's somebody to look into. Because again, if you just wanted to trade like second round pick or two and say, give us Najee Marshall, he fits perfectly into what the Pistons already do. Great defender, super tough nose, can handle, can pass, and in the playoffs prove like, yeah, he can definitely handle his own. I put Jarris Walker as a buy low option. He's not doing very well with the Pacers right now, although they're giving him minutes, maybe playing out of position where he's playing at small forward, and he's really in the past been a power forward and center. Very good passer. The shooting's kind of up and down. Pacers don't really care anyway. I mean, when you're playing Jay Huff the low minutes that they are, and he's like maybe the third or fourth best shot blocker in the league, it just tells you the Pacers are doing weird things. So maybe buy low on a Jarris Walker. Very quietly, Noah Clowney is ascending into a very good stretch big. So go check out Noah Clowney too if you're interested in stretch bigs. And another guy that like, if they were like, ah, here's a pick, or like, hey, let's swap out interesting guys. Noah Clowney is a good one. Pete Krejci kind of falling out of favor in Atlanta. Another really buy low option if they just want another pure shooter. He's fallen down the rotation, but he's still knocking the lights out when he shoots. Another guy that's completely fallen out of favor that they don't play hardly at all in Toronto is Grady Dick. We saw how great he did last year. Another guy that's probably number two in hiding that I should have talked about here. I mean, if you wanted to just trade a first round pick for Grady Dick, something like that, yeah, for sure. For whatever reason, Toronto's not playing him. Jamison Battle, another guy that came in last year, knocked down 3-point shooter. I mean, what we wanted from the backup four of a guy that just can bomb away from three, and think of somebody like Sam Hauser. That's what Jamison Battle is. Bizarrely not playing him as much as they did last year, although I don't know why. Jacoby Walter, another dude there that played well in the time that he was given in Toronto. Another shooter, not quite as tall as the other guys, so that's why he's kind of third on my list, a little bit more limited. Dalton Connect, he's kind of lost in the shuffle there in LA if they're trying to, maneuver for another big trade. He's another dude that like get in the shuffle and be like, hey, if you don't want him, that other team doesn't want him, we'll take him. And then for me, why I'm kind of out on Giannis is if Giannis gets traded, I think the Pistons need to pillage Milwaukee. AJ Green, Bobby Portis, Gary Trent Jr., Andre Jackson Jr. in that order. AJ Green, absolutely Duncan Robinson replacement for whenever he leaves. We've seen him now a couple times where when he's healthy and gets in there, like he is a problem. He's not that good on defense, but man, he is one of the best shooters in the NBA. Bobby Portis, I don't know how those practices with him and Isaiah Stewart are going to work out, but he's the big that we need for sure. And he fits in, like you said it countless times when we've talked about wanting Bobby Portis. He's a Piston through and through, fit in perfectly, be great. And then Gary Trent Jr., another guy that isn't utilized enough there. Great 3-point shooter, can create some off the dribble. And I is really good in there in Milwaukee. I like Andre Jackson Jr. He might be more like of the same with the Ron Holland and the Asar Thompson, where he's more of an athlete. Shooting isn't really there, but again, another buy low option. So I do like those role players in Milwaukee. Anybody stand out here from you in this updated traded player exception list, Andy?
I think I heard Laz mention Noah Clowney. Um, let me see. I what do you think about picking up, like, let's say if the Pacers just wanted to like dump basically Obi Toppin. Um, what are your thoughts on picking up a player and even like I didn't think about it before, but like a guy like Grady Dick, a guy who can shoot the ball, who's out of the rotation, who's still young, where it's like he could become a Duncan Robinson backup slash down the road replacing him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the Obi Toppin one, I think Obi's out for the season, isn't he? I know he's out for quite a while. Him and Neesmith were originally on the list in the off season, and then I took them off because I remember looking up guys and injuries and status and whatnot. It says Obi's got a foot injury. He'll undergo foot surgery and miss at least 3 months. So that's why I took Obi off the table.
But for me, it's like, and I wouldn't be looking at getting Obi for this year. It'd actually be for like next year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, see, to me, they got to bring in somebody for this year. If they're looking at for next year, they either have to be really young, like a Grady Dick, or it has to be a first round pick, which we'll get into here in a minute, because this is all about asset building. It should either be let's bring in somebody who's missing in our rotation right now, like the number two scorer, like the 3-point shooter, or let's bring in somebody that's going to help build out our depth or something that's going to help build out our depth. So I don't think Obi really fits into that right now. Let me tell you how old Obi is. I know he's not like super old, but I don't think he's like 25, under 25. Let's see. Oops, that's the Wizards. I'm trying to get to the Pacers. Obi Toppin is 27.
Okay.
And Grady Dick, yeah, I'm down with the Grady Dick one. I don't know that anybody else would do it, but like I might give up this year's first for Grady Dick. Because what 27 is theoretically where the Pistons are picking maybe 29 if they keep up on this, right? Like, are you going to find a Grady Dick at that spot? Probably not.
What, when is he due to be re-signed?
I think 2 years from now. So that would be, see, next season's 27, 28, 29, something like that, 28 or 29.
Yeah, because I mean, for me, I'm looking
So the
at
pick would be in the 2028 off season.
okay, yeah, I'm because again, like I'm looking for a shooter. We wanna we wanna add a shooter, and if you are looking like what you said, the idea of what you said in terms of giving up a first round pick to get someone like Grady Dick, I know some people think it might be bad that they would rather have the first round pick, but you want to have someone that can contribute right now if needed, but also gives you the option of flexibility down the road where like we've seen it with like Lanier that it's like he's pretty much ready to play, but he can't crack the rotation. And if you're picking late in the first round, that's about the type of player you're going to be drafting, in my opinion. So unless you smash the pick out of the park, they're not really going to contribute. Where at least someone like Grady Dick, you've seen him play in the NBA. You've seen him have a very good stretch playing in the NBA. And sometimes you wonder if maybe he lost part of his role because they're paying other guys a whole lot of money, that it's like we can't play you over them unless you're really going to be so much better than them, which I don't see happening.
Yeah, I mean, it just he played because Brandon Ingram, IQ, Emmanuel quickly. Like, so many dudes were hurt there. And then Keon Ellis to me is kind of like the cutoff line of giving up the first round pick because Keon Ellis is 25 years old. So you theoretically think like he's got probably more than 5 years left in him. And he's been good enough when given starter minutes to show like, oh, this is like a top-notch Christian Brown type of role player. Again, I don't know why the Kings ever. You could just go listen to Kings podcast. You can listen to Zach Lowe. You can listen to Bill Simmons. This has been a running theme for a long time of like, man, pull the numbers on him. Why don't they play him more? And it's really hard to find a Keon Ellis. It's really hard to find like a Grady Dick. So it's like, yeah, those are the kinds of guys to me that if you wanted to give up a first round pick and then just use that traded player exception to where you don't have to worry about losing your depth, that's the whole point of first round picks is you're trying to build out the depth, and this is exactly what it's doing.
Yeah. And yeah, that would work. I just still think they have to get a shooter. I think that's just something they need. Um, but again, every win they make, I think you're less and less likely to see something happen, which I don't think is the right approach. I think something around the margins should be done. For instance, like with all the depth we have, a guy like Marcus Sasser isn't going to crack the lineup rotation at all. And it's like if other teams think he has potential, you got to move him and try and get something for him rather than just having guys sitting there that are going to waste away.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And one more time, the traded player exception guys list for us anyway. Keon Ellis at the top, Daniel Gafford, Buddy Hield, Herb Jones, Josh Green, Grant Williams, Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, Isaac Okoro, Corey Kispert, Sadiq Bey, come home, Jordan Hawkins, Max Christie, Najee Marshall, Jarris Walker, Noah Clowney, Vít Krejci, Grady Dick, Jamison Battle, Jacoby Walter, Dalton Connect, and then the Pillage Milwaukee guys, AJ Green, Bobby Portis, Gary Trent Jr., Andre Jackson Jr. All those guys can be traded without needing to send anybody back if the team doesn't want to. They fit right into that traded player exception. The last thing we're going to talk about, which I think, if nothing else, because I understand the argument now and watching this team night in, night out, the chemistry, the depth, their identity, the fear, especially for like the AD and the Giannis trades, is if you trade that many dudes, like, man, does it disrupt the culture? Does it really mess up with the depth to where if that Giannis gets hurt or if the AD injury happens, like it always does, like you're just stuck. Whereas before you had this, depth and you had this camaraderie and that was what was helping you win. And then you went in all in this big trade and that guy got hurt and then nothing. I mean, we saw with Dame and Giannis when Dame got hurt. We're seeing it now with Giannis and Giannis getting hurt, right? Um, so I think if nothing else, this team ought to use the trade deadline to get more picks. I mean, maybe they wait in the offseason too, because when you have this many guys worthy of playing, but you don't have enough minutes, you got to turn them into picks so you can use that to build out your depth because that is coming. It's coming very soon. It's coming this offseason with Dern and Ivy. Denver did this, right? Denver has built out first round picks to get the Christian Browns, to get the Julian Strothers, to get the Peyton Watson, right? And then OKC, obviously OKC is the best at doing this, with just stacking first round pick on first round pick. Obviously, we don't have future Hall of Famers to be able to just pillage people, but if you are going to trade a Jaden Ivey, if you are going to trade a Jalen Duren, if you are going to trade anybody else, Karis LeVert, Tobias Harris, I don't know those guys are worth first round picks, right? But you got to trade for picks at the very minimum because if you don't end up re-signing these guys and you get nothing back, then like, what was the point of it? The depth meant almost nothing.
Talking about Herb Jones just for a minute, Do you have any questions about his three-point shooting? Because he basically had one good season of three-point shooting, and the rest has been average. Which, if you're a lockdown defender and you can shoot average from three, like you're still going to stay on the court. And he is a good free throw shooter. But he had one good year where he shot a good percentage. The rest has just been average.
Let's take a look at what Herb Jones is shooting right now. 33.8% from three. Again, your definition of average. The Pistons have Fred Vinson, who was Herb Jones' shooting coach when he came in the league. If Fred Vinson says yes, you say yes. That would be my answer.
I think that's a pretty fair answer.
And from what I've seen from college to now, like I believe in it. This Pelican team isn't exactly lighting the world on fire. Outside of Trey Murphy and Sadiq Bey, I mean, Fears has been much better from three, but he's taking way less threes than anybody else. It's Trey, Sadiq, Alvarado, and then Herb Jones and Fears. And Herb Jones' minutes has been kind of like waxing and waning. So I think the main thing for me would be what is Herb Jones's three-point attempt rate, which obviously I haven't looked at in a while, and it is 47.9%. So that's what makes it less of a thing for me. I'm like, if you're getting hovering around 50% of your shots from three and you're shooting over 33%, I'm gonna believe in you. And for what this team needs in particular is somebody like that who's not necessarily going to get in the way and understand the assignment of like, you need to space out the floor for Cade and all these other guys to help get us more space.
All right.
So I guess I lied. I did have one Hail Mary trade. Um, Pray for the Raptors' downfall. Because there is only one trade that I think makes perfect sense that if I were Trajan Langdon, I would be angling for year after year after year, and that's Scotty Barnes. That's the Hail Mary trade that if what we talk about with like OG Anunoby, or not OG Anunoby, sorry, Mikal Bridges, and who's the other guy that they gave up like 5 first-round picks for that people were like, I don't know about that. Do you remember?
I um
Was it Rudy?
Rudy Gobert. It was Rudy.
Yeah, I think Scotty is Devin Booker, obviously, but Scotty makes more sense. Like I might do the 5 for him. Scotty's 24 years old. The bigger thing is he and Kate are like best buddies. They play together at Montverde. They play well, and Scotty has become a legitimate three-point shooter. 38.3% from three right now. 53.8% from 2-point range, and then 84.7% from the free throw line. And Scotty checks all the boxes for what the Pistons like to do. 19.7 points per game, 7.8 rebounds, 5.3 assists, 1.4 steals, 1.6 blocks per game. Like he is multi-purpose defender. You can have him handle the ball. You can have him guard power forwards, small forwards, some centers, 6'8", 237. And again, the way he and Cade played in high school and the chemistry and the friendship and camaraderie they already have, that is one where to me, I'm like, if you would needed to trade Ivy and Duran, do it. Send him out there because I think he and Cade will work fantastic together. And that is the one where I'm like, you can ride with those guys. This is like a Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum type of situation where both guys are young. You just let them ride it out and try and figure out the rest of the roster as you go along.
So that sounds like someone who's young enough and talented enough that that would make sense. Um, Most of the other guys that you would make that big trade for are far enough along in their career that you're going to deal with the tail end of the career where you don't want to deal with that. Scotty's young enough that it's like, yeah, I mean, those guys are similar in age, so it's just going to be something just like Brown and Tatum, where just keep changing the players around them until you have a season where you hit the jackpot.
This have been very good this season, but I mean, Brandon Ingram, RJ Barrett, not exactly guys who've been consistently great. And if they're turning the team more over to those guys, especially Brandon Ingram's been getting a lot of usage. I mean, they paid him all that money, they probably need to. And RJ Barrett's kind of around the same production, everything as Scotty. It might lead to a situation where he's like, what am I doing here? Like, you're giving the team up to those guys. I want to get out of here. So that was one situation for sure. And why, at the very minimum, at least trade for picks because you should be building it up for that because he and Cade would want to play together.
I understand your Hail Mary.
All right, Andy, you got anything else to say before we get out of here?
The Pistons are good. They are a very good basketball team. And we think that we're just critical because we want them to do well in the playoffs and into future seasons.
Yes, and this team is good enough that this is a season where it's like Eastern Conference Finals is not off the table. The East is wide open with how the Cavs have struggled. Like, oh my gosh. And with New York being the only like real legitimate threat so far right now. Boston, don't count them out like we talked about at the top of the podcast here, just with their system. They've already won a title. They're really only missing Tatum. Tatum could theoretically come back too in the playoffs. I don't think it's a smart idea, but they're a team that shouldn't be discounted and how they've clawed their way back into being towards the top of the East. And then you see the way the Pistons played them tonight. Really, it's going to come down to like, what do they look like against New York? They looked great against them last year. So stands to reason they should look better against them this year, seeing as how they've played so much better. Why not get to the Eastern Conference Finals? And that is really like our focus now is thinking, how can they get there? How can they get to the finals? It is a realistic option this season. So any criticism we have is going to be directed towards that. It's just like the lack of the 3-point shooting, the free throws. These are things that can kill you in the playoffs. So what are they going to do to address it the rest of the season? Well, we enjoy them racking up win after win. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to us. Andy, one more time, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at D_D_Pistons_fan.
We will return after 30 games to finally pull so many different numbers. And I'm excited and worried for some players on off and defensive field goal percentages and whatnot. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to us. We'll catch you next time. We're going to